And welcome, Hoosier fans, to this week's edition of Assembly Call Radio, where each week we discuss the most important IU basketball stories from the past 7 days. This is our 80th edition of Assembly Call Radio, and it is our 411th episode overall of the Assembly Call, recorded on the evening of Thursday, June 14th, 2018. I am your host, Jared Morris. And let's begin this edition of the Assembly Call how we begin every edition of the Assembly Call, and that is with our Hoosier Proud banner moment.
And Indiana is the national champion.
When it comes down, Indiana will be champion.
Smart takes the shot.
The Hoosiers have won the national championship.
This week's banner moment occurred on Tuesday, June 12th at 7:18 p.m. when the official IU basketball Twitter account tweeted a 40-second video of Indiana's 5 freshmen arriving on campus. We saw Jake Forrester with a pink shirt, backpack, and his old-school Juwan Morgan-style shock-top hairdo. We saw the serious-looking strolls of Jerome Hunter and Demezy Anderson. We saw Robert Finnessy munching on what appeared to be candy and flashing a sideways peace sign. And, of course, we saw Romeo Langford strolling as casually as you'd expect him to, glancing down at his phone. Now, the first reason this moment was important should be obvious. This is Archie's first recruiting class, and it is a top 10 group that features a one-and-done superstar, another guy with clear star potential, and then 3 additional 4-star players who fit specific needs and who, at a minimum, project as solid 4-year contributors for IU. In other words, it's a foundational recruiting class for a program that needed its cracking foundation repaired. And now they are on campus, ready to work on their bodies with Cliff Marshall, on their games with IU's coaches, and on their chemistry together and with their veteran teammates. This is why Tuesday was an important milestone for the Archie Miller rebuild of IU basketball. But this particular moment and this particular tweet was also important for another reason. Like the Deron Davis video blog from 2 weeks back, this was yet another example of Indiana using social media in a smart, strategic way. This short video gave us as fans a few extra little bits of exposure to the players we'll be cheering for over the next 4 seasons, which builds excitement and anticipation for the season. But more importantly, it's a signal to the top-rated recruits Indiana is going after that when you arrive on IU's campus, it will mean something. Your arrival won't go unnoticed. Now, maybe that kind of thinking will ruffle the feathers of some old schoolers, people who might still prefer that freshmen be ineligible. But the reality is that top-rated basketball recruits, the kind you build a blue blood program with, are used to exposure and attention and their presence being a big deal. This video and other smart ways that Indiana is using social media are signals to those players that Indiana is a perfect place to continue building themselves as basketball players and to build themselves as basketball brands. It isn't 1976 anymore. It isn't 1993. It isn't even 2013. It's 2018, and Archie Miller's Indiana basketball program has 2 feet firmly planted in the new era of college basketball. Okay, now let me introduce my esteemed co-host for this week's show. Yes, I said co-host. Andy is out for the next 2 weeks.
And I don't feel bad about it at all.
And unfortunately, both Zach and Coach Tonsoni are unavailable this week, so you know what that means. That's right. To my right, he is a man who deftly navigated a treacherous conversation about Las Vegas and its many entertainment options during his weekly radio appearance with Kent Sterling. He's a columnist for The Big Lead and the new radio sensation that is burning up the airwaves in San Diego. And he is someone who always responds the exact same way when he hears that a referee has simultaneously blown a call and drawn attention to himself in an important nationally televised game.
Was it Ted Valentine?
Yes, it probably was. He is
San Diego chicken.
Ryan Phillips.
Cereal and milk, cereal and milk, cereal and milk, cereal and milk. I want my Wheaties, give them to the needy.
Ryan, what is your rant this week?
I'm not sure I like that San Diego chicken whatever drop. I think we may have to do away with that for the sake of my feelings. I agree with you. I think I'm going to piggyback on what you said. I think that it was great seeing those kids hit campus. And, you know, we're an Indiana show, so obviously we're focused on the Indiana guys. But really, there were a couple videos or just pictures of kids all across the country hitting campus. And it's great to see. I love seeing stuff like that because it's these kids finally taking the next step and realizing their dreams. And a lot of, you know, let's face it, a lot of people don't that wind up playing college basketball, maybe didn't have the means to even go to college. So seeing these kids get that opportunity and things like that, even if it's at a MAC school or a tiny school, I think that's great to see. Of course, we care more about Indiana, and it was great seeing all of those kids look so excited to be on campus, not just to play basketball, but to sort of further their lives in general. And that's just always awesome to see. It's always fun to see young people sort of achieving their dreams. And so seeing those guys all hit campus, all be excited about it was awesome. And you're right about social media. This is not 1983 or 87 or 93 or whatever. This is a new world. And to some of these kids, it isn't just about playing college basketball. It's about, as you said, building their stature, building their brand. And you have to show them that, hey, we can make you a star. We can let your personality shine a little bit. Like you saw in that Deron Davis video, you got to know Deron a little bit. I know it was only 7 minutes, but you kind of got to know the kind of kid he was a little bit. And, at least that's the way it was presented. I mean, we know what kind of kid he was presented as, and maybe a little bit into their daily lives and what they go through and things like that. I think it's a great move by Archie Miller, because it's a way to make these kids stars to different audiences, not just a national television audience, not just the people who show up to games, but, expose them to the social media world, maybe show them how important that is, maybe show them how important it is to sort of, I guess, present yourself in a certain way on social media, as opposed to maybe some guys who just kind of go off on there. It's about packaging yourself the right way and presenting yourself the right way. So I think there's a lot of lessons to be learned there. It's great to see. And I agree with Archie that one of the things he said when he got there was he wanted to take the social media game to the 21st century, because he didn't think it was there at Indiana. And I agree with it. I think what they've been doing is great.
All right, here are the topics and the questions we are going to address this week. DJ Carton sets his official visit to Indiana. How important is it for the Hoosiers to land Carton? And with the NBA draft coming up next week, we take a look back at the last 30 years of Indiana draft picks. Which was the best? Which was the worst? What are some of the takeaways? We will rank them in order. And of course, we will end the show by taking your questions. All of that coming here on Assembly Call Radio. Now, real quick, before we get to all that, I want to tell you about 2 great ways to shop online for tickets and for IU gear that also help us out at the same time. Remember these 2 URLs, iutickets.shop and iustore.shop. Memorize them, bookmark them, whatever works for you, because when you use them to buy IU tickets or gear, we actually get paid a commission for referring you. So iutickets.shop will take you right to SeatGeek, where you can browse the latest listings on IU basketball tickets and always find the best prices and deals. You can also search for IU football tickets, sports tickets, concert tickets, anything. As long as you use iutickets.shop to get there, we'll get credit. And as a bonus, use the promo code ASSEMBLY to get $20 back after your first purchase. iustore.shop will take you to the official IU online store, where they have gear for everyone and everything, from shirts, hats, and jerseys for adults and kids, to tailgate gear, office gear, basically you name it, and they've got it. And they run a lot of deals there too. So go there and check, because they're always doing 15% off, 20% off, so you can get good prices there. Look, we really, really appreciate you bookmarking and using those URLs, because the commissions add up and help us cover the cost of running the show. And just in case you aren't sure exactly where to type those URLs in to access the websites, Ryan would like to issue this helpful reminder.
They have the internet on computers now. You can probably go find it.
Yeah, so thank you for that, Ryan. That's very helpful. Again, the URLs are iutickets.shop and iustore.shop.
Thank you.
All righty. You are listening to Assembly Call Radio. I am Jared Morris here with Ryan Phillips.
These guys are real life idiots.
And, we don't spend a ton of time on the show, Ryan, talking about recruits who, haven't committed yet and aren't top-notch in-state prospects. It's just, we obviously started out as a post-game show, and we like to talk more about things that we know are going to happen. But I think there's a certain recruit in this upcoming class that we want to make an exception with, and that is DJ Carton. I think we all agree that Trace Jackson Davis is the most important recruit in the class of 2019, just given the position that he plays, where, that he's an in-state guy, how much time and effort Indiana has invested in him. But DJ Carton, who's a point guard from Bettendorf, Iowa, may not be far behind. And a big part of that is because of the need that Indiana has in the backcourt and the dearth of high quality, like 5-star, high 4-star players. in the Midwest. And the most important piece of news this week, and this came from Matthew Bain of the Des Moines Register, is that Carton will make an official visit to Michigan on June 27th and 28th, and then will visit Indiana on the weekend of June 30th. And the other schools involved with him are Iowa, Xavier, Marquette, and Ohio State. So, right now you've got Indiana getting involved with some in-state prospects like Armand Franklin and Brandon Newman. They're, ranked, around 100. Maybe not like start day one types like a Carton is. And then Indiana is also targeting out of region prospects like Kira Lewis and Jamius Ramsey and Anthony Harris, who are higher rated but seem less likely simply because they don't have the connection to the region. So you add all of that up, and as I'm looking at the recruiting board, DJ Carton to me is the other guy that Indiana really, really needs to get. And right now, it looks like Indiana's in a pretty good position, but we'll obviously have to wait and see how that official visit goes and when he starts cutting his list even more.
Yeah, chatter on him has always been Michigan and Indiana sort of catching up lately and looking like they're in a good position now. But Michigan has been the long-held favorite for him, and we'll see how it goes.
What have you had a chance to look at DJ at all? To get an idea. What are your thoughts on him?
I have a general overview. One of the things I like, he's a really cerebral player. I love the pace of his play, and by that I don't mean that he plays fast. I mean that he reads the game really well, knows when to speed up, knows when to slow down, which I think is a perfect fit for what Archie Miller wants to do. He wants to score in transition, but then he wants to run good, solid half-court offense if that isn't there, and set stuff too. It's not just a sort of freelancing offense like we've seen in the past. What I like about him is he finishes at the hoop. He obviously, as always, needs to get stronger. He's not a big guy. He's 6'1", 180. So he needs to be able to take that pounding.
Is he only 6'1"? I thought he was taller than that.
That's what I saw him listed at. Might be a little. No, I think he might be 6'3" actually. But he's very lean. He actually plays smaller than he is because he just doesn't have a whole lot of bulk on him. Great handle, great vision. He has some really nice hesitation moves. He's great at actually getting to the basket. It's finishing at the hoop that needs the work, and finishing with both hands. He's a lefty, so finishing with that right hand is going to be very important at the next level. I think he's a willing defender. I don't know if it's his focus now. I think that like a lot of young guards, he sort of plays for the steal as opposed to playing for good defense. But again, that's just high school basketball. That's the AAU circuit these days. And I think the one glaring spot for me is he needs to work on his 3-point, his outside shooting. He's a lefty, as I said. Lefties tend to have pretty jacked up mechanics. I don't know why. It just tends to work that way. It's very rare that a lefty has great mechanics as a shooter. It doesn't mean it can't happen. It's just rare. Sorry, I don't mean to offend any lefties out there, but he is he a lot of times doesn't get his whole body behind his shot. He kind of shoots off to the, like he'll have his feet pointed one way while he's shooting the other. And then also with his mechanics, instead of snapping the ball and having, snapping his wrist and having the ball roll off the back of his fingers, sometimes he kind of gets over the top of it and sort of shoots it, pushing it. And that leads to line drives, low shots, and those are obviously much less likely to go in. What I will say is somebody with bad mechanics can make shots. But the margin for error shrinks and shrinks and shrinks and shrinks. I mean, Lonzo Ball made 40-something% of his threes while at UCLA, but any one little thing off in his shot ruins it and makes it look really ugly. And so that's just an example of how bad mechanics don't kill you as a shooter, but they make it much, much harder to be successful. So it's just some tweaks there would really work things out for him, but he's a very good player. I wouldn't be surprised if he eventually gets a 5th star if he cleans up some of that stuff heading into next year.
I think he's already gotten a 5th star according to
I saw 4 where I was looking. I was looking all over at him though.
Yeah.
So
no, he was a 4-star. I mean, he's kind of a borderline guy, but either way, I mean, he's one of the top guard prospects. And like I said, I mean, there's just not.
He is 6'1", by the way. I'm right on that. 6'1",
Okay.
6'2" are the two things he's listed at. So.
But he's definitely, one of the most important names to watch. And so, it'll be interesting to see what he decides and then what Indiana does if he decides not to come. But that would fill a huge hole for Indiana if he does.
Quick update. Just saw on the composite, he's a 4-star, but 24/7 has him listed as a 5-star. So he's right on that borderline. One thing I also will say is I think that you saw him in high school. So far, I've seen him take a lot of shots that I really would like him not to take. But I think that's also a symptom of like with someone like Romeo Langford, he's so far above his teammates. I mean, Romeo had some great teammates, but they were good high school teammates, not next level college player teammates. I think it's the same with DJ Carton, where he's forced to take some shots that he probably shouldn't be taking, and with better teammates around him would probably pass those up. So I wrote that as a negative, but then as I was thinking about it, I'm thinking, well, he's going to be the guy that has to score for his team as well as play as a point guard. So it kind of changes that. So I think he'll be fine at the next level. I think that's something that'll get worked out.
And hopefully where he is at the next level is Indiana.
Well, here we go.
All right. Coming up. We take a look back at the last 30 years of Indiana draft picks. We rank them from least valuable to most valuable based on the production they delivered relative to their draft position. The biggest takeaway, Indiana just hasn't had enough draft picks over the last 3 decades. We'll discuss. That's next. Stick with us. You can't go wrong with Round Ball Rock.
No, that's awesome. Especially you're going to talk about the NBA, right?
That's what we're going for. What were you going to say?
I was just going to say, hopefully he winds up. Yeah.
Yeah, Kent would like you to know that Calvert Chaney is a left-hander and the leading all-time scorer in the Big Ten.
Yeah, and he was a great finisher around the rim, but jump shots. Hey, by the way,
hey, Calvert was a great shooter.
No, I'm just teasing. No, lefties can have good shots. It's just rare. I mean, name the great left-handed shooters.
Brian Evans.
Yeah. Okay. Keep going. And I'm not talking about Indiana. I'm just ever. They just. I mean, and it's not. Again, it's okay. You know how? And to those watching on YouTube, I'll try and explain it this way. You know how in baseball, right-handed pitchers tend to throw directly over the top, or maybe a little bit off center, and lefties always throw 3/4. There's something about the biomechanics of the body that we're not symmetrical. Our organs on the inside are different in different areas, and we move differently from each side. And for some reason, lefties tend to drop their elbows more when they shoot. They tend to sometimes move their hand really far in towards the middle. You'll see guys doing that Lonzo Ball, D'Angelo Russell thing where they shoot across themselves. I mean, it's weird. I don't know what the reason is, but it is different. And you just see that more often from lefties than you do righties. And I don't know what the reason is.
I don't know if that's accurate, but all right.
I was really bad at biology, so I can't tell you, but yeah, I have no idea.
I refuse to believe that's the case.
It is.
Andy does not agree with you, just so you know. He's not in agreement. It's nice having Andy here, even though he's not here.
I know.
I sat around and drank beer and watched basketball today.
That's what he's doing right now.
That's what he's doing.
And I don't feel bad about it at all.
He shouldn't. No, but I mean, if you look at the all-time great shooters, so few of them are lefties, and there's a reason. And they just, for some reason, the mechanics just aren't as good. And you can be a good shooter without great mechanics. Allen Iverson shot the ball pretty well for most of his career. He had terrible shooting mechanics. I go back to Lonzo Ball all the time. He hasn't cracked the code in the NBA yet, but at UCLA, he was a great shooter. For some reason, you look at that shot and you think there's no way. And it would go in. I don't know how.
Well, it was coached by Steve Alford.
Of course.
Like osmosis.
Yeah. Exactly. That's the whole reason. But yeah,
he does have an ugly shot.
Oh, it's hideous. I mean, but it is. It's weird. It does go in though, and there's no earthly reason why it should.
Chris Mullin was another good one.
Was he a lefty?
Yeah, but I mean, to your point, it's hard to think.
It's hard to think of them, right? You know, you immediately think of the best shooters of all time. It's like Steph Curry.
I immediately thought of Ken Griffey Jr. for some reason. That's how hard it was.
Well, I will say this: as pretty as right-handed shots are versus left-handed shots, left-handed baseball swings are way prettier than right-handed baseball swings.
Yeah,
because they have that sort of upward trajectory. I mean, Ken Griffey Jr.'s swing was poetry. I mean, it was, and
it was.
But yeah, there's just certain differences in body types that do that.
It was. All right, you ready for segment number 2?
Whenever you are, my friend. Whenever the audience is.
That was me. Let me open one thing up real quick here. Do you have a story that you want to tell for 30 seconds?
No, I'm just looking at someone Kent disagrees with me because he's a lefty.
Well, there you go. Don't alienate 10% of our audience.
Someone said, what podcast is this?
Yeah, because the music, they're used to the John Mellencamp. I think that's what Jamil was referencing. Oh, no, he said love the music. So I don't know why he's saying, "Ugh, what podcast is this?" Maybe because there's drops of Andy, and he's just not used to hearing Andy.
Reggie Miller, perfect example. Awful shot mechanics. Somebody mentioned that. Jim Miller did. Awful shot mechanics. Shots went in.
They went pretty well. Pretty well. Okay, let's do segment number 2. Let's start talking about Indiana's exciting recent draft history. Here we go.
Let's do it.
You are listening to the Assembly Call. If you ever have to miss all or part of an episode of Assembly Call Radio, there are 2 great ways to catch up. You can subscribe to our podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. Just search for Assembly Call, or you can watch our live broadcasts on Thursday nights and participate in the live chat on YouTube. And when you watch on YouTube, for better or worse, you get all of the between segment banter that doesn't make it into the radio or podcast edit, which in one episode featured Ryan making this not so subtle and truly childish threat to anyone who questions his opinions.
I will absolutely meet anybody by the bike racks after school if they want to fight.
Subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/assemblycall. I am Jared Morris here with Ryan Phillips. No supervision this week from Andy Bottoms.
I don't see how that could go wrong.
Ryan, do you remember the context of that statement, by the way?
No idea. I don't.
We were talking about the coaching search with and we were getting ready to prime you to talk about Steve Alford and Greg Marshall.
Good.
So you were saying that for anybody who wanted to suggest those 2 as coaches for Indiana. It made me laugh. Anyway, so let's talk about the draft. So the last 30 years, the draft is coming up next week. So when you look at the last 30 years of the draft for Indiana, and obviously there were drafts before that, and we'll get to that in a second, but a few kind of top line numbers here. Indiana has had 22 players drafted since 1987. That's less than a player per year, obviously. The Hoosiers have had 12 first-round picks. They've had 5 lottery selections. And they have had a total of 7 players who have accumulated at least 10 win shares. That's a statistic on Basketball Reference during their career. And by the way, that does not include Josh Smith, despite him being part of the IU family. I did not include him in.
He'll always be part of the IU family.
Always be part of the IU family. Didn't include him in there. So just those numbers real quick, Ryan, top line numbers. What does that tell you about IU basketball since 1987?
Got to do better. Got to do better.
Got to have more high level talent. I mean,
well, think about especially in the way that recruiting is these days. It's about showing that you can put guys in the league. I mean, especially if you're going after those top level guys. I think that it is definitely about showing that you can put people in the league. You can take a 5-star guy and turn him in to a top level player and get him in that lottery, get him in the first round. And Indiana has not done well at that over the last, what is it, 2 decades? I mean, geez, that's
and look, and prior to that, and our buddy at IU Artifacts, Bill Murphy, people like that would kill me if I didn't mention this. Indiana had a lot of draft success prior to 1987. Think about it. Walt Bellamy was the first overall pick in 1961, Hall of Fame. Isaiah Thomas, second overall in 1981, Hall of Fame. George McGinnis, probably the greatest draft pick in IU history, given the value, second round pick, 22nd overall, Hall of Fame, had a great career. You had Dick and Tom Van Arsdale were both drafted and had good careers. Mike Woodson was the 12th overall pick, had a good career. John McLaughlin. Kent Benson was the first overall pick, probably didn't live up to that, but did play in the league for 10, 12 seasons. So the Hoosiers did have a lot of success prior to that, but since 1987, it has been more limited. And so what we did, Ryan, is we went through and we looked at all of these guys and just wanted to assess, the value relative to their draft position and see, what were the best draft picks who, have produced the most relative to their draft position and who have struggled the most. And, for this analysis, given that some guys are still in the middle of their careers, we had to balance, who still has time left in their career with guys whose careers are over. And one thing I debated was whether or not we should include OG Anunoby and Thomas Bryant, given that they've only played 1 season. But, when I looked at it, OG is already 11th out of the 22 players in terms of win shares, and he's played 1 season. So that tells you the lack of success that a lot of these players have had. So I figured because of that, we have to include him because, he's already one of the top 10 draft picks of the last, 30 years. So we've got him in there. So let's start with the least valuable draft pick of all time. And this is not, fun to do because this is a guy that we like, that we've had on the show before, but it's Kirk Haston. He was picked number 16 in the first round by Charlotte in 2001. He played in the NBA for 2 years, played 5 minutes per game, 1.2 points. He actually accounted for negative 0.5 win shares. He's the only player on the list that had negative win shares.
Ouch.
And, when we talked to Kirk, when we interviewed him a couple years ago, when his book Days of Night came out, he told us that was one of his big regrets was, leaving. He would have been part of that 2002 team. I mean, put him on that team. Imagine how good they could have been. And that was one of his big regrets. And obviously his NBA career didn't turn out like he wanted to. He had his reasons for leaving. And it doesn't denigrate anything that he did as a college player. He was a great college player, but just didn't have the kind of game that would really translate to the NBA. So because he had the negative 0.5 win shares, he actually, and was a first round pick. I mean, that hurts as a first round pick. He, is a less valuable draft pick even than Damon Bailey, who didn't play at all, but at least was the 44th overall pick. And then, kind of going up from the bottom, Jay Edwards, who was second round, 33rd overall, played 1 year, didn't make a mark. Keith Smart was a second round pick, number 41, didn't make a mark. Daryl Thomas was actually a 7th round pick back when they had that many rounds. The late Daryl Thomas, he didn't play. So you go there. Any general thoughts there on the guys at the bottom of the list?
Yeah, I mean, it's just sometimes great college players just aren't great NBA players. It's the ultimate, view of that. And I think that, for some guys, it just does not translate. And for some guys, they do make poor decisions. Kirk Haston is certainly one of those guys who I believe made a poor decision. I think that there's another guy I think we're going to talk about later who I think we all agree made a poor decision. But at the same time, they make the decisions for whatever reason, whether it's family reasons, whether it's money, financial reasons, whether they're just tired of, doing the college thing or whatever. They make their decisions for themselves and they have to live with it. So, I never get down on guys for leaving early. They all have their own reasons for doing so, but I do believe that I think it's fair to say that Kirk Haston is the ultimate example of a guy who made a mistake and could have come back and certainly increased his draft stock.
You're listening to the Assembly Call. I'm Jared Morris here with Ryan Phillips. We are talking about the least valuable Indiana draft picks over the last 30 years, leading all the way up to the most valuable. So let's run through these other guys kind of quickly and just go through the list. Number 17, Greg Graham. He was a first-round pick, picked number 17 by Charlotte.
If you're an Indiana Hoosier and you go to Charlotte, it rarely turns out well.
It's not a good thing. Not a good thing. Number 16, Bracy Wright, was a second-round pick for Minnesota. Andre Patterson in 1998 was a second-round pick of Minnesota. Brian Evans at number 14. He was the 27th pick in the first round for Orlando. And, there's really not a lot separating these guys. They all played, 2, 3, 4 years in the league, played 8 to 10 minutes per game, didn't score very much. So there wasn't a whole lot separating them. Next up is A.J. Guyton, number 13. He was a second-round pick, did play 15 minutes per game in his 3 years, which is more than any of the other guys that we've mentioned, but didn't produce a lot. And now this is where I want to get your feedback on this, Ryan, because I think you'll have some insight. The final 3 guys here that kind of round up the bottom part of this list, I put Thomas Bryant at number 12, and he's only played, he was the 42nd pick in last year's draft. Only
played most of the year in the G League.
Yeah, and played 15 games, 4.8 minutes, didn't really leave a mark. And then above him on this list, your boy, Steve Alford, second round pick, number 26 for Dallas. He played 4 years, played about 9.7 minutes per game. And then DJ White at number 10, he was a first-round pick, number 29 by Detroit, played some for the Oklahoma City Thunder, spent 6 years in the league, 15.3 minutes. I put Thomas Bryant below those guys because they actually produced something, but I feel like Thomas could rise above those guys if his career goes like we think it will, because he was the 42nd pick, and I think he's got the ability to give the Lakers or some team some value at the 42nd pick. What did you see from him just his first year to make you agree or disagree?
A vastly improved player is what I saw. A much better ball handler, much more consistent shooter, a lot more solid, just overall game. He's really playing well defensively. He was a G League midseason All-Star. Just no room for him on the Lakers because they had $20 million Brook Lopez for 1 year, and Ivica Zubats, a European center, was also on the team. So they just let Thomas go down to the G League, develop, and they have him on the bench during games. And then towards the end of the year, they started bringing him with them on the road, and he started getting some more games. And I think that he's a part of the future out there. Now, this summer is going to be really interesting for Thomas and something for IU fans to pay attention to, because he may wind up somewhere else if they decide to go after 2 max contract players. Not to get completely off the rails here, but this impacts an IU guy I think we all like. If the Lakers try and go after 2 max contract players, they're going to have to clear the roster other than their top 4 young guys, which is Josh Hart, Lonzo Ball, Brandon Ingram, and Kyle Kuzma. They're going to have to clear the rest of the roster, which means they're going to have to let Thomas Bryant go. And I don't think they want to do that. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. He certainly will be mentioned in a lot of these conversations about if the Lakers are going to get these big guys. You'll see his name mentioned a lot. And I know the Lakers really like him. I just don't know, what their priorities are this summer. So I would love to see him stick out there. And I think he can be the second unit center next year, potentially turning into a guy who gets, maybe just below starters minutes, because I really like the way he runs the floor. I like the way he can finish at the rim. I like the way he can step out and shoot it. I think he fits the modern NBA really well. And I think we'll start to see that wherever he winds up.
Yeah, it looked like his shot continued to develop.
It got much better this year. Yeah. And he was a monster rebounder this year as well. So,
I mean, look, we saw it his freshman year. He was absolutely outstanding. I know, as a sophomore, he struggled a little bit under some of the increased pressure, and
well, that whole team,
that whole season fell apart. But
you remember that Thomas was a lottery pick if he left his freshman year. He was a surefire top 15 pick, no matter what. And he could have had the worst workout in the world. Somebody, after that freshman year, somebody would have taken him. But when everybody suffered that next year and the whole team kind of stunk it up, it brought everybody down, and he fell the second round because of that. So, and there were thoughts before the draft that he wouldn't even get drafted, and that's unbelievable to go from a lottery pick to potentially not drafted. But the Lakers, I think, got a steal there.
Yeah. And look, obviously this analysis doesn't take into account guys like Yogi Ferrell and Troy Williams who have succeeded, and stuck around in the NBA despite not getting drafted. We just wanted to analyze the actual draft pick and how the guys did who got picked. So those are the least valuable IU draft picks over the last 30 years. And let's move on now, and we'll talk about the other guys. So coming up, we continue our look back at the last 30 years of NBA drafts from an IU perspective. We've counted down the 12 least valuable selections since 1987. Now we will count down the 9 most valuable selections. Where does Victor Oladipo rank among them? Stick with us. We'll find out next. All right. That was 12:30. So we are right on time. And we saved a little bit of extra time for this segment, which is good because it'll be more interesting.
Hold on one second. I'm just going to listen to something real quick.
Yes. Jamil says Bryant to the Pacers. I think we could all get behind that. Just put them all on the Pacers, man. Get Yogi on the Pacers. Get Thomas on the Pacers. Put them all on there. What are you listening to? Yeah, Brett says Vic may not be at number 1, but may well be heading that way. It's, it really just kind of depends on your criteria. I mean, we'll talk about that. Van says he's surprised Vonleh wasn't in the bottom half. I mean, the thing is, we'll get to this, talking about Vonleh.
He was the guy I was saying that everybody knows.
Well, he hasn't delivered a great return, but man, you look at his production compared to the other guys, there's no one to knock him out. That's the thing. Like, there's no one to knock Noah out of there. So they're just, man.
Yeah, sorry about that.
A lot of good guys.
We're trying to figure out what our intro song is going to be on the radio show this weekend. So.
On the radio show. Oh, wait. We have breaking news. The radio show has a name.
It does.
You announced it on Twitter. Would you like to announce it to the live audience that doesn't follow your Twitter feed?
Yes. Yes. So Saturday, I will be having a radio show launch with 2 co-hosts on San Diego's biggest sports talk station, the Mighty 1090. a.m. It's going to go from 9 to 11 Pacific. You guys can listen to it. You can stream it online. Jared, of course, because he loves me, is going to retweet it from the Assembly Call account when I post it.
No.
Damn it. But it is going to be called The Hangover. So it's me and two other guys, and we're doing a morning show. So we just decided to call it The Hangover. So we're going to do it for the summer, see where it goes. Don't know if it's going to become a long-term gig, but it will be certainly a temporary one.
Way to go.
I know, right?
Andy's very excited for you. No, that's awesome, man.
Thank
I like
you.
it. I like the social media presence, getting out there with some pictures and having some fun with Photoshop.
Yeah, and we're going to be doing it live too from a location, from a soccer bar in the middle of the World Cup, which should be interesting. Yeah.
My.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, we're taking the first show on the road, which might be a little ambitious.
Well, I wish you the best with it. I'm sure it'll go well.
Thanks, man.
Okay.
All right.
Clear my throat real quick. All right, let's dive in here and talk draft picks. We'll start from the bottom, and then we'll move our way up. Okay. Here we go. You ready? Oh, you're muted. Okay. All right, here we go.
I've been so many places in my life and time.
Welcome back. You are listening to the Assembly Call. So here is a little fun fact. We have over 5,600 IU fans from around the globe who subscribe to our email newsletter.
There's a high-level operation going on out there.
And you can join too. It is easy. Just text IU to 66866 or go to assemblycall.com. You will get our weekly Six Banner Sunday news roundups as well as our post-game analysis emails once the season begins. It is all free and it will make you a smarter and more well-informed IU basketball fan. Again, go to assemblycall.com or text IU to 66866 and join for free today.
Make no excuses.
All right, I'm Jared Morris here in a rare two-man booth this week with Ryan Phillips. And Ryan, we're talking about Indiana draft picks over the last 30 years. And we spent the last segment kind of talking about how few there have been and what that means for the program and talking about some of the guys who have really struggled. Now we'll get to the top 9. And again, you think about these are the best draft picks of the last 30 years from Indiana.
Yeesh.
And it is suggestive of why the program hasn't quite lived up to its blue blood status. Because, look, a lot of these guys were great college players. They're guys that we all really like. And some of them have had good professional careers. But this is not the kind of list that a Kentucky would have or that a Kansas would have or that one of those schools would have.
Here's what I want to interject and say real quick is, Kentucky has had just as many busts as Indiana. The problem is, or the difference is, they're putting 5 guys in the lottery every couple of years. You get 1 or 2 of those guys to hit, and you're fine. Or 1 or 2 of those guys to be decent. Even it elevates you to another level, and it covers the busts. When you're not having that many guys in the lottery or the first round, you got a thinner margin for error. So that's just it's so apparent here.
All right, so going up from the bottom, number 9 is Noah Vonleh, who was a first-round pick, the 9th pick for the Charlotte Hornets. He's played 4 years. He's averaged 15.5 minutes and 4 points. And I know someone in our live chat was wondering where Noah was, and I kind of thought
on the worst.
On the worst picks, and I kind of thought he'd be down there too. But man, when you look at the production of the other guys, there's just no one to knock him off the list. And and he still has some time to continue developing and to rack up some production. But there's just not many other guys there to knock him off. So Noah's here at number 9. Number 8 is Jared.
Noah, let's say about Noah first. I think that along with Kirk Haston, he's one of those guys that definitely should have come back for another year and developed his game a little more.
He should have been on that 2-year plan. He should have listened.
Look, I was trying to give the kid good advice, and nobody listens to me.
Noah was on a 2-year plan.
We all remember.
He was.
Over and over again. I know. So at number 8 is Jared Jeffries, who was the number 11 pick of Washington, spent a lot of time with New York, and he carved out an 11-year career, played 21.6 minutes, didn't score a lot, 4.8 points, so wasn't hugely productive. But
if you ask advanced stats people, they will say Jared Jeffries is one of the worst offensive players in NBA history, but he played long enough that it sort of worked out numbers-wise if you look at these numbers.
Yeah. Next up is Dean Garrett, and he was a second-round pick of Phoenix. And, given that he was a second-round pick, 38th overall, he really returned some value. He played 6 years, 19.4 points, 4.8 points per game. So pretty solid there. And then next up is Cody Zeller. You want to speak about Cody Zeller for just a moment, Ryan?
I think he's a guy who's just in a bad situation in Charlotte. I mean, he's been a wildly efficient player. I think it was not this past season, but the season before. Some analytics guys talked about how he was one of the most efficient players in the NBA. He just wasn't getting enough time. And I think that Charlotte has just been a black hole for good draft picks, and Charlotte drafts poorly as well. You see, they had Cody Zeller, yet they went out and got Frank Kaminsky. I mean, those are such similar players that you're really shooting yourself in the foot. They had Cody Zeller and they drafted Noah Vonleh. Like it's just they don't have a coherent draft strategy, and that's leading to stacked depth chart of guys in the same position, and it's really hamstrung Cody's career. I think he's a guy like Victor Oladipo. Now, I don't think he's going to go out and become an all-star like Victor Oladipo, but I think he's a guy who could benefit from a change of scenery like that and could be much, much better if he had a chance to flourish somewhere else and a chance where they believe in him and say, hey, you're the starter, go play, go figure this out.
Yeah, and then, I had coming in next, and this, can probably be debated, I put OG Anunoby next because he was the 23rd pick this year, and I know he's only played 1 year. We could have given OG and Thomas incompletes, but I wanted to fit him in here. But if you just kind of project, played 20 minutes a game, 5.9 points, according to win shares, had 3 win shares. He projects to be a guy who's pretty valuable. And so given that he was only the 23rd pick, that was kind of the tiebreaker for me between he and Cody Zeller, because the expectations of a 4th overall pick are different than the expectations of a 23rd overall pick. So you can probably pick that, but it's just kind of projecting forward a little bit.
Look, OG as a rookie was guarding LeBron James in the playoffs. Now, LeBron made him look like a rookie at times, but LeBron James does that to veterans as well. So, but I thought it was great. A great season for OG, especially considering it's his first year coming back off the knee surgery. It's not like he came in at 100% and ready to go. So this is a guy who is only going to get better and is already one of the top defensive wings in the NBA. And you heard people just praising him in the playoffs before they, of course, ran into the buzzsaw that was the Cavs in that series. That was, if the Cavs from that series played the Warriors, it would not have been a sweep. It would have gone maybe 5 games.
You are listening to The Assembly Call. I'm Jared Morris here with Ryan Phillips, and we're talking about the most valuable Indiana draft picks of the last 30 years. And given that we just hit number 5, and it's OG Anunoby, who's only played 1 season so far, kind of tells you what this list is about. But next up on the list, we need some sort of I need to get some cool special music, triumphant music with trumpets playing. It is the great Calbert Cheaney, who was the 6th pick of the Washington Bullets. Back then, they were the Bullets in 1993. Calbert did play 13 years. He averaged 26.7 minutes, only averaged 9.5 points per game for his career, but was a much better scorer early on. And he's even said, he wishes he had kind of kept himself in better shape and had some of the more modern, workout and nutrition advice that they have now, dealt with some injuries. Had a solid career. He, for a couple of years there when Washington was up and coming, they had accumulated a lot of draft picks and they looked like they were going to be a pretty good team. He was a really solid player for those teams. And, again, you could quibble because he was picked so high at number 6 that the expectations were so high, but there just haven't been that many other guys who have produced. So I find it hard to put anybody else above him as being more valuable. So a solid career for Calbert. He goes at number 4. Next up is Alan Henderson, who Calbert played with at Indiana. He was the 16th pick of the Atlanta Hawks, played for 12 years, and didn't quite have the same career as Calbert. Played 21 minutes a game, 7.8 points, but was a very good rebounder. Just a really solid, consistent player. And the reason he gets the nod over Calbert is he was the 16th pick. Calbert was the 6th pick, so a little bit more valuable there because of the value. So before we get to the top 2, Ryan, I know back then you were much more focused on, Tony Gwynn and Dan Fouts than you were on Calbert Cheaney and Alan Henderson.
Dan Fouts retired in 1988, Jared. Come on
whatever. I don't know all my San Diego players that well. Any thoughts on any of those other guys before we get to the top two?
Calvert and Allen, I would say, had very solid NBA careers. Those were solid NBA players, and they weren't transcendent. Allen Henderson was a great garbage man for the Hawks for a while, off the bench, guy who would just mix it up. He was definitely a great late 90s, early 2000s player. One of those guys who just, back when guys used to just stand and throw punches at each other during loose balls, he was just one of those tough guys, and was alternately fun to watch, but also at times very ugly to watch. But that's the way the game was played back then. As far as Calvert Chaney goes, I think that a lot of people thought he would be a much more of a volume scorer. Really never happened. You're right about the, keeping himself in shape. And a lot of guys from that era say that, that the competition is obviously the hardest thing when you get to the NBA, but a close second is handling the travel, handling, playing that many games, handling, keeping yourself in shape, using food as fuel and not just, what tastes good, and, all of that stuff, and continuing to work out during the season, even when you're tired. All of that stuff just wears guys out. And so that's probably the biggest challenge you face, because I think these guys have played basketball their whole lives. And while the competition is very difficult, that comes natural. Whereas the other stuff, you need to step up your game at the NBA level. And it's a big jump, just like you see with these guys coming in from high school, need to take it to the next level in order to be successful college players. It's the same level of jump.
So the top two guys, and you might have guessed from the intro song for this segment, but the top two guys here, Eric Gordon and Victor Oladipo. And I think you could argue either way for whoever you want to be number one. The argument for Eric Gordon is he was the 7th pick, so he was picked a little bit later than Victor, which means he has a little bit lower burden of expectation for production. He's already played 10 years. He's been 6th man of the year. He's just produced more. He's kind of got more skins on the wall than Victor does. Has obviously played in some key playoff series. And look, Victor got that experience last year with Oklahoma City, got it this year in more of a lead role with Indiana. But the reason why I put Victor at number one, Ryan, I'm interested to hear what you think about this, despite the fact that he was picked number 2 and there's such high expectations for that slot, is this year he was an all-NBA player. And if you're going to pick someone at number 2 or even at number 7, you're looking to get a superstar type player. And Victor Oladipo is now the one guy over the last 30 years that has made an all-NBA team that you look at as, hey, this guy could be a superstar in the NBA now as we move forward. So given that he has reached a higher level than Eric Gordon as a player, and, Indiana is now his team, I put him at number 1 over Gordon. But both of those guys, have they lived up to the level of their pick yet? Maybe not. And there were certainly other guys picked after them in those drafts that have produced more so far. But they've both had careers pretty close to what you would need to do to live up to that draft pick. And Victor looks like he's just getting ready to take off.
Yeah, and he's played half the time that Eric Gordon has, and he already is, more than half the win shares, and most of that coming this year. I think that you're right. I think you're 100% right to put Victor number 1, because he also looks like a star, and he looked like a star this year. And again, sometimes it's just as simple as a change of scenery to somewhere where people believe in you can change everything. And you'll see a really talented guy in college, and you'll just be like, I can't believe how much of a bust he was in the pros. A lot of times it has nothing to do with talent. It has to do with the right situation, being where you're comfortable, being around people that believe in you, and being around people that just say, hey, go play your game. Do what you do. Don't try and do what we want you to do. Go play the way you're comfortable. Changes the game for him. And I think that Victor was a guy who finally got that this year, and it allowed him to flourish. And if you look at Eric Gordon, I think if you look at long-term of his career, he is putting up the numbers of a really good 6th man, like a high level 6th man. For the 10 years that he's been in the NBA. That's what it looks like. Now, he started for a lot of those years, but if you're looking at his career from a macro sense, that looks like a guy who he's doing a great job. You can't complain about what he's done, but it also looks like he's found the perfect role in Houston, coming off the bench at a high volume scoring team where he can just come out, get to the rim, shoot threes, and run up and down the floor. That's the perfect fit for him. He was an ill fit for the Clippers. He was a bad fit for the Pelicans, and he had injuries. So those definitely held him back on this list. But I still think that you're right. With the All-NBA pick for Victor, I think he goes number 1 easily.
Now, what needs to happen is we need to revisit this topic in 5 years, and we need to be talking about Romeo Langford and Jerome Hunter, and who knows, Jake Forrester, maybe Rob Finney, maybe Devontae Green. We're talking about
Clifton Moore,
Trace Jackson Davis. Like, let's talk DJ Carton. Let's talk about all these guys. Seriously, I mean, I think we all expect that Romeo is going to be on this list. I mean, he's most likely going to be a lottery pick after next year. Who else on the roster right now do you think has the best chance of vaulting into the top 10 of this list?
Are we
5-6 years from now?
Are we including the guys who just got on campus last week?
Yeah, all of them. Just take Romeo out of it. He's
okay, take Romeo out of it. Oh, sure, yeah.
Take
Make
Romeo.
it hard.
Well, that's no
No,
fun.
I'm kidding. Geez, the top. Oh man, because I'm down to 2, and I can't decide.
Jerome Hunter and who?
Juwan Morgan.
Oh, here we go again with Juwan Morgan.
I think he could have an Allen Henderson-like career. I do. Just one of those guys where he's never an all-star, but just has solid season after solid season after solid season. If you want a Purdue comparison, guy like Carl Landry, who just stuck around for a long time.
I'm giving you a hard time, but I agree with you, especially after what Juwan showed last year.
Yeah, those are the two guys. I mean, of course, Juwan would have to stay healthy. I think that.
But you would agree that Jerome would seem to have a higher ceiling.
As far as the ceiling goes, I think he's the obvious pick.
Based on what we know of him, which obviously isn't a ton right now.
And you know what? If a guy like Jake Forrester were about 2.5, 3 inches taller, if you're around the 6'10", 6'11" area, I might pick him just because he's that run and jump big man the NBA loves right now. Guys who
like him, man.
I do too. I think he's
going to play more this year than people think. I just
could. This summer's big for him. This summer is big for him. He needs to get in the gym, get bigger, and continue to develop that athleticism, and work on his handle, work on holding onto the ball when he gets it in the post, things like that. But things that everybody needs to work on when they get on campus. But I think this summer's big for him if he wants to play this year. But I would say if a guy like him was a little taller and was a run and jump big man like that with versatility, who can step out on the floor because he's mobile enough to, in a pick and roll situation, take a guard and just at least make sure he doesn't get beat off the dribble, I might pick him because he has the traits they're looking for in the NBA. Yeah. But I think Jerome Hunter is the easy answer. Juwan Morgan is a guy I think, given this list and how weak it is, I think he could wind up.
It's a really weak list, man.
I think he could wind up piling up a 10-year career with a lot of win shares, if you're looking at it that way.
All righty. Well, that concludes our discussion of Indiana's NBA draft values over the last 30 years.
I felt like we had an amazing conversation on all levels.
Thank you, Coach. I agree. Coming up in our final segment, we answer your questions, which includes what team statistic we think will make the biggest jump this season and whether we'd rather have more 5-star one-and-dones like Romeo or more solid 4-year contributors like Juwan Morgan. That and more coming up next. Stick with us. All right.
Isn't it great having different outro music?
No, it is. I'm enjoying it.
I just love that song. Sorry.
Well, it's a great song.
Oh,
it's a great song. And I heard Romeo is a big Michael Jackson fan. So
really,
gonna have to play some more Michael Jackson. Oh man,
I'm
glad I found that mute button. I thought I was gonna die that segment.
Yeah, I noticed. I kept talking. I wandered a little.
No, I appreciated it. Man, I think one cough slipped through on the local recording, but. Holy moly. All right, let me do some quick addition here. You want to entertain the folks while I do some math?
Padres are losing 4-2, folks. You can laugh.
Entertain the folks. Don't talk. Get that San Diego chicken bleep out of here.
Yeah, watch that. Man.
Do you like the really pathetic beep sound that I added to it though?
Yeah, that was awful.
Chicken.
It's like such a low tone beep.
It sounded like one of those handheld games you play in the 80s, like they had a little button, like
San Diego chicken.
It's like handheld baseball when you strike out or something.
Yeah. Okay, so let me get serious here for a second. We have 6:45. So all right. We need to start the outro at about 6:09 or so.
Hey, everybody in the chat, where you think LeBron is going this summer?
Ooh. Sounds like the call waiting tone.
I have my my pick. Not
You-
Cleveland.
No, I don't think he's staying in Cleveland.
Could you
You think he's
blame
going
him?
to LA, don't you?
I don't know. I think going into it, I think it's all pretty even. I think LA, Houston, Philly are all pretty even. There's probably a chance at Miami if his family just wants to go there and he's kind of just like, all right, I'm checking out. You know, like I don't
Wait,
care.
Miami? You think Miami is a legit shot?
If he decides it's really about family and not about necessarily challenging the Warriors, and it's like, okay, this is my retirement basically of playing. You know, he and Pat Riley will BS about how they're going to be good or what, you know what I mean? But I think that like I would give that like a 3% shot.
Oh, okay.
But I'm just like, yeah. But then the other three I think are about even with the Lakers, Philly, and Houston. Here's the thing, and I'm going to write about this today, is that if LeBron wants to dethrone the Warriors, he needs to change his mentality. He can't try and create another super team. He's got to go somewhere with good, young, efficient players, because that's the only way he's going to dethrone the Warriors. Because if you create a super team, it's 3 against 4, you know, plus Iguodala. So 3 against 4.5. If you're facing the Warriors, because all the Warriors guys took pay cuts so they could all stay together still. So you're going 3 against 4. And if you create a super team, you max out the cap, you wind up with a bunch of veteran minimum players who, you know, are in their 30s and not very good. And then you're relying on them to hit shots in the playoffs, like Kyle Korver, who, when he's not making threes, he's utterly useless on the court. So I just think that, again, if he tries to do that again, it's going to be a massive failure and he's going to wind up disappointed. If he goes to, say, the Sixers, they've got 4 or 5 guys who can all do stuff on the floor, who are young, energetic, healthy, can put up numbers, they've got guys who can defend. They've got guys who can shoot threes. They've got guys who can make plays. It makes it easier for him to play. He doesn't have to play all 82 games. He doesn't have to play 35 minutes a game in 82 games. He can dial it back. And then when it's closing time and they need the guy to sort of take the lead, that's when he can step up. So I think Philly or Los Angeles makes the most sense because they've got those young assets. I don't think he should bring a buddy with him. I think that's stupid, because I think you're taking, like Paul George and LeBron James combined would take up $65 million somewhere. The cap is like 100. That means you're filling out the entire rest of the roster with that. And I just think that's stupid. So I don't know. I think Philly or Los Angeles makes the most sense if he wants to do. Now, he might not beat the Warriors next year. It might be 2 years, but something with a young group like that. Someone mentioned the Spurs too. I think Spurs would be a great option. I just don't think he's going to go there. Spurs are in contract hell for a while, so I don't, and they got to re-sign Kawhi, so I don't know if that's going to happen.
No,
I'd love to see that though. I think LeBron and Popovich are 2 of the best basketball minds of the last, like those 2 and Kobe Bryant are 3 of the best basketball minds of the last 25 years, and I would love to see those guys, those 2 working together.
Yeah. All right, so there are Ryan's thoughts on LeBron.
Yep.
Be on the lookout for that article,
which will be coming out hopefully tomorrow morning.
They'll let anybody write stuff online.
Absolutely, they will. I'm just lucky enough to get paid for it.
I'm really digging like snarky Andy as like the role for Andy with drops.
So funny because in person he's so mild mannered. Like,
by the way,
get the guy behind a microphone or a keyboard, and what happens?
You know what's funny is like all of these came from like one conversation where he got really worked up. It was like back at the beginning of last offseason when the coaching search happened. He must have been drinking before the show because he was a little looser that show.
Well, it's so funny because when we started this, you guys both used to drink for the post game shows because you drink during the games.
Yeah.
I have never once had a drink on the air except for the Syracuse game that they lost, where I went into a mall in the middle of freezing Milwaukee, an abandoned mall, and called in from there. So
yeah. No, I haven't really since we went to the video. No. I did before we went.
There's nothing wrong with having a beer.
Last 3 years. No. I know, but there's too much to pay attention to.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Back when the show was.
Now, when Heather was pregnant, you stopped drinking, right? Just out of solidarity, right?
Yep, out of solidarity.
Now, did you go back to it though?
Sure.
Okay, I wasn't sure if you still did or not. I mean, I know when we went to Bloomington, you did, but I wasn't sure if that was just like a special occasion. Okay.
Yeah, no, I do. I do.
So when you come out to San Diego,
not as much as I did before, but
right, yeah. I mean, dude, I don't drink anywhere near as well. We'll save this for Assembly Call after dark.
Okay.
Let's just get
there's a little tease. All right, let's get through the Indiana basketball crap we have to talk about now, and then let's get to Assembly Call after dark.
Yep.
All right, we got some questions. All right, here we go. Where are we at here? Intro music. Okay. I'm not muted anywhere, am I? Nope. Okay. Here we go. You are listening to the Assembly Call. We are wrapping up another week of talking IU basketball. I am Jared Morris. I'm here with Ryan Phillips, and let's get right to your questions. We've got some good ones this week. The first one comes to us from Adam in our Slack group. Adam says, by the end of the upcoming season, which stat will be most improved by the team? Free throw percentage, three-point percentage, defensive KenPom ranking, or other? Well, I'm going to go other. And I want to give a shout out to Bart Torvik, who was the guest that Alex Bozich and I had on this week's edition of Podcast on the Brink. If you haven't gone and checked out Bart's T-Rank site, it's barttorvik.com. He does projections similar to KenPom, but they've got a little bit of a twist, and he adds a bunch of additional types of stats in different contexts. And he's got his projections for next year up. And here's what I thought was really interesting. His adjusted defensive efficiency projection for Indiana next season is 96.9, which is 56th in the country. Last season, it was 96.9, 57th in the country. His offensive rating for Indiana this season is, projection is 117.7, 13th in the country. Last season, it was 110, 82nd. And I think that makes some sense. I mean, I think we all would like to see the defense improve, but let's remember that we're losing an all Big Ten level defender in Robert Johnson, who was outstanding. And again, we're going to be replacing, we've got a lot of young guys coming in. We don't know what kind of a defender Evan Fitzner is. And so while I would certainly hope Indiana's defense is better than 57th, I could see it stagnating a little bit more after the big jump it made last year. But you add an elite offensive talent like Romeo Langford to Juwan Morgan, add a shooter like Fitzner and some of the other talent, I can see Indiana's offense taking a big jump. So I actually think Indiana's offensive efficiency can take the biggest jump this year, in part because of how bad it was last year, but also in part because of the talent influx. Ryan, what do you think?
I think it's going to be free throw percentage.
Well, I mean, that and three-point percentage are pretty easy because they were so low last year.
Yeah, and that's why I would say it. But I agree with you. I think the offensive rating is – I mean, I agree with your reasoning on the offensive rating. I absolutely do. I just think if you're looking at those, I think free throw and three-point are probably pretty interlinked, and they were so low that they probably will be the most improved. And I also think with the defensive rating, it's going to be very interesting. We'll know by November, late November, whether or not that's going to make a big jump. I think that the team will definitely progressively get better as the year goes on. But remember, last year they started so poorly, and the fact that they were able to make that
were in the 200s last year,
and the fact that they were able to make it as high as they did, and that fell off a little at the end last year. But the fact that they were able to make it as high as they did is a testament to that team getting so much better defensively. If Archie can do that same thing, even though you're losing Robert Johnson, even though you're losing, a couple veterans, you do gain a lot more physical talent. So I think that it will improve. I don't think it'll be the same. I think it will improve, but I don't know how much it will improve.
All right, this question is from Eric, who asked it on Facebook. Any chance that Romeo stays 2 years to possibly play with Watford, Brooks, and Jackson Davis? Obviously, if any of them decide to come to IU, Andy's going to take this question. No, Romeo will be gone after one season. Let's just not even entertain the thought of a 2-year plan.
Well, he said any chance, and what I'll say is the only chance is no. I'm going to say relax. If he's healthy and plays, to his potential this year, he's going. So, I mean, you said any chance. Yeah, there's a tiny, tiny chance if something goes wrong, or if next year's draft winds up just being ridiculously loaded. Some guys will choose to come back another year. I mean, Miles Bridges came back. Guys do it. So, yeah, I'd put the chance at less than 1%, but sure. Any chance? Yes. If you're asking that question, I'm answering it as it's written. Any chance? Yes, there is, of course, a chance.
Oh, my. Okay.
Always a chance, but I do not think he's on a 2-year plan.
Okay. This is from Scott in our Slack group. Random thought. Would you rather have a high-ranked freshman for a year like Romeo or a player who has stayed for 4 years but could be an all-Big Ten guy like Morgan? Romeo creates some unknown upside that can be exciting versus you have seen Morgan grow. You get Romeo for 1 year. So look, Ryan, we know that the answer is you want to blend. You need solid 4-year guys. You need to add in the elite talent.
Villanova is the model
Yes.
program.
We know that. But let's just, on the extremes, if you had to decide one way or the other, would you rather have your program built more by the solid 4-year guys or more with the elite one and done guys? If you had to pick one side, not the blend that we know is the ideal.
I'm going to qualify this really quickly to say I think Romeo is a special case because of what he means to the state of Indiana.
Agreed.
So if it's Romeo versus a great 4-year guy, I'm taking Romeo because of what specifically he means. But let's just take a random 5-star 1-year player who didn't have the career Romeo had and all that. He's special. I would say the 4-year player because I think that you have a better chance to win a national title with 4-year players, 3-year players, veteran guys than you do with an all 5-star freshman. And that's played out over the years. You're right though. The key is to get the blend. You want to have a blend of veterans and high level talent, young guys. That's how you win a national title. That's the world now because of these one and dones. High level teams are spending half their seasons, like Duke and Kentucky and whoever are spending half their seasons just getting to know each other, where these other guys are already up and running. They've been through the wars. They've been through a tournament. They know the situation. And they've been through conference play, things like that. It elevates you down the stretch. So I would say, yeah.
Yeah, and as a fan, again, Romeo's a special case, but I prefer the experience of watching a guy grow and develop over 4 years.
It's so much more rewarding.
Yes, like a Juwan Morgan, like a Yogi Ferrell. I just think that's a much better experience as a fan. All right, that'll do it for us on this week's episode of The Assembly Call. If you want to see us do the show live and be part of the live chat, join us at assemblycall.com on Thursday nights for the live broadcast of our Assembly Call radio recording, or you can always subscribe to our podcast by searching for Assembly Call wherever you listen to podcasts. And don't forget to go to assemblycall.com/join to join our free email newsletter or text IU to 66866. Thank you for listening. We will be back to talk IU hoops again with you next week. Until then, keep your elbows in and your eyes on the rim, and go Hoosiers.
Thank everybody for coming out.
And that's a wrap.
All right, I got to do this version of Assembly Call After Dark very quickly.
All right.
So last Friday,
what are we talking about again?
I was going to say something about drinking.
Yeah.
So last Friday, I went out and had a beer with a friend, just a beer. One beer over like 4 hours. I really just wasn't feeling like drinking. I was kind of tired. Get in an Uber, head home. Get dropped off. Really nice Uber driver. Get dropped off, walk up to my gate, use my key to like scan myself in, walk in. I get ready to go to the elevator. And I go to reach my phone, and my friend was going to say, "Hey, I got home," or whatever. I go to pull out my phone. No phone. So I immediately turn around, and I know I had it in the car. So I turn around and I chase the Uber down my street, around the corner, out onto a main street, up another, like, I probably ran 500 yards in the span. I mean, I really wish I would have been at the NFL Combine because I think I could have clocked like a 4.5. Just in jeans, and like I was just with a bad knee. I easily clocked a 4.5. So this is just this story is a warning to all of you people. So phone, I know my phone's in the back of that car. So I get back into my apartment. I contact Uber support on Twitter. I go online. I'm like, what do you do if you leave your phone in the Uber? This has to happen all the time. So the thing is that if you go online to contact Uber about losing your phone, what they do is they won't give you the driver's number because obviously they don't want people stalking their drivers and all that stuff. So what they do is you can dial into a number, and then that number, it's an Uber number, and then that number connects you to your driver. But the problem is for that, you need a phone. The whole point is I had lost my phone. And so I'm sitting in my apartment. I don't have a landline. Nobody has a landline anymore. I'm sitting in my apartment. It's 2 a.m. or like 1:30. And I'm like, what the hell am I supposed to do? I tried Skype. The Skype would not connect me. I tried everything. Finally, my friend who was a nurse was working an overnight shift, and I sent her a Facebook message, which I never use. I sent her a Facebook. I'm like, hey, do you have a break? She's like, I have a break in an hour. I was like, because they're not, nurses aren't allowed to have their phones. I'm like, can you let me know what's going on? She's like, yes. So she finally, and by the way, this whole time I'm talking to Uber Sport, I'm like, look, I need you to get in touch with the driver via email, whatever. Just tell her to come back. I'll give her like a $60 tip, whatever. Just tell her to come back. And they're like, yes, we're processing your request. 4 hours later, I had gotten like 5, we're processing your request. Now, I get it. It's a Friday night, national company. They're probably very busy, but still, all I needed was for them to connect me via Skype. Or whatever, for 2 seconds. So she gets a break. She goes to a break room and she's like, all right, what do I do? And I'm like, I have to dial your number on this thing, have it connect you, and then you have to talk to my driver. And so she does that. Now, by the way, if the driver wants to contact her and be like, hey, by the way, I missed your call or whatever, there's no way I'm going to know about it because I'm sitting at home with no phone. And so she leaves a message or she wakes my driver up. First of all, driver was passed out asleep, wakes my driver up, and she's like, okay, just call me back. Have him call me back and leave his email address so we can get in touch with him. And she's like, okay. So I have to do the dialing up thing online again. So it calls her phone and then her phone calls whatever. It's just so friggin' confusing. And she leaves a message. So the next day I wake up expecting, okay, I'm going to have an email from my driver, figure out a time to meet up. I'll give her a really nice tip for hooking me up, whatever. I wake up and there's no email. And I'm supposed to meet my co-hosts for the radio show. They can't contact me because I don't have a phone. They don't know that I don't have a phone. I tried tweeting them and whatever. It's just insane. And finally, I go back to my parents' house, use my dad's cell phone to connect with the driver. She happens to be in Mexico for the day. She can't meet me until like 7:00 that night. I've got to be at a certain place at a certain time, and I've got to, she's got her whole family with her. It was this whole thing. She's like, oh yeah, I found it turns out the reason why I didn't have an email is because she's like, I found your phone in my car, and I know your friend called me and woke me up last night, but I woke up this morning to write down your information, and as I'm writing down your information, I deleted the voicemail on accident. And so I never would have heard from her if I hadn't got in touch with her. This was the most ridiculous ordeal of my life. And the moral of the story is never leave your friggin' phone in an Uber like an idiot. And the worst part of the whole thing, if I had been out and been drunk, okay, whatever. It just happened. I was stone friggin' sober and lost my phone in an Uber, which is something that would only happen to me. Only me. I'm the only person that would happen to. So if you're watching, guys, yeah, somebody just said in the chat, just walk home. Like, no, walk home. Or, just don't be an idiot and have your phone fall out of your pocket in a car. That's my story for the week, guys.
Someone in the chat said Ryan Saquon Barkley Phillips.
Yeah.
That's not something I was ever prepared to see.
I know. I wish I had his upper body, man. He's ripped. That's gonna be a drop, isn't it?
This whole thing. There's like 30 of them from right here.
I'm just gonna stop talking.
It's beautiful. No, it's beautiful. It is beautiful. All right, I gotta go edit this bad boy. Thanks for being here, everybody. We'll be back next week. It's you, me, and Coach Tonsoni.
Awesome. Looking forward to it.
We'll figure it out. We'll be live during the draft. So.
Oh shoot.
Yeah. So hopefully you can still be here. If not,
yeah, I might. It might be the kind of thing where I might have to take a segment or two off. But okay. I'll do the intro and do
All right, we'll probably do a player breakdown next week. Or something.
Yeah, and you guys can. I mean, he can handle a full segment of breaking down with you. I think.
Yeah, maybe there'll be some news.
Yeah. So yeah, it's going to depend. I totally forgot the draft was next week. I thought it was in 2 weeks. But yeah, I mean, I'm sure I can do parts of the show. It's not a big deal.
Okay. Cool.
But what was I going to say? Yeah, no, that works. Retweet. I'll send you the radio show link to tweet out this weekend.
No.
Fine.
San Diego chicken shit.
Oh, it's the blue version, huh? All right.
That drop is so funny. I laugh
Later,
every time
guys.
I hear it. All right. See you, everybody.
Later, guys.